legislation. We are going to do a weekly recap with Mac, where he goes over the current events going on with Kratom legislation, what you need to know, what you should be doing next, and all that good stuff. So, Mr. Mac Haddo, welcome aboard. What's going on?
Well, thank you for this opportunity. Just before I got on, I was subject to a little bit of criticism about why I would be supporting this podcast over the Kratom Gals, what I call the 7OH Gals podcast. And I explained to them that they won't let me on. I mean, so why wouldn't I come on another podcast to help inform consumers, Kratom consumers, about what's going on? But that's an interesting situation that's developed. This week has sort of been a recap. I'll give you the recap of some very significant events that are going on. I was in Tennessee, where we once again tried to point out that the fundamental basis for the legislation that was proposed by the sponsor is defective on two fronts. First is that it relies upon the autopsy and the tox screen of an individual, Matthew Davenport, that in fact demonstrates conclusively that it was an overdose due to Benadryl, not Kratom. And the idea that they would promote this complete deception to the legislature, there's no doubt that Matthew Davenport obviously was struggling with a cocktail of drugs. And we know from the evidence that has been produced by the National Institutes on Drug Abuse and the research there, and acknowledged by the FDA, that while Kratom deaths are rare, most are due to polydrug use, which means that the cause of the death is going to be really found in what drugs that individual is using, or adulterated Kratom products, which in this case are 7OH products. But Matthew Davenport had an extraordinarily high toxic dose of Benadryl. His level of metrogenine was not very high. It was below the level that the NMS Labs, the preeminent forensic toxicology lab in the country, says is not even a level of concern, let alone a toxic level. So this fraud that's being perpetrated on the Tennessee legislature by a over-emotional sponsor is just nuts. And we tried to explain that. The other fundamental flaw, and this is an important one, because in all legislation that is being proposed, there's always a concern at the state level about how much this bill is going to cost. And in this case is another fraud. So the second big fraud on the legislature is that the fiscal note determined that there were only 38,000 people who were Kratom consumers in the state of Tennessee. And they use a survey that was done by SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration, and they only look at drug addicts. And so when they do surveys, they're not doing a broad population survey. And when called out about this by Dr. Henningfield and Dr. Eustace, the author agreed that they understated the number of people. And yet the fiscal analyst in the state of Tennessee used that number. The real number of Kratom consumers, if you rely upon what Dr. Grundmann's survey, peer-reviewed published literature, he found that 9.1% of the population uses Kratom throughout the United States. And when you then take and extrapolate that to the Tennessee population, that's 500 and I think 30, just around 530,000 Kratom consumers. So even if you want to find some number between those things, the fiscal impact is driven by the number of Kratom consumers. So in this case, the fiscal analyst said 38,000 Kratom consumers, and this is how much they spend a year. And so this is what the loss of sales tax revenue will be in the state. It is understated by 13 times. It's set at $1.2, almost $1.3 million. The true number is $15 million. $15 million in sales tax revenue. In incarceration costs, they understated the incarceration cost of people that would be arrested, convicted, and incarcerated under a ban was understated by the same proportion. So it's millions of dollars rather than 500,000, whatever the number was. This kind of deliberately misleading data in order to win the day, because in the state of Tennessee, there is no way that the governor would fund $20 million in outlays. And what the fiscal analysts did not do in any way is look at the impact of people that are currently using kratom when it's banned and they go back to opioids or other illicit drugs. And this was highlighted about what a ban would cause by Dr. Joie in 2018 when he rejected the FDA's recommendation for scheduling and withdrew. And in his letter, his scathing letter, he said that one of the significant events would be that you'll force people into these more dangerous substances in order to manage their acute and chronic pain. And what does that create? Overdoses and substance abuse treatment. And the cost of those substance abuse treatments, using the data from the Tennessee Mental Health Division, would be around $1 billion. So where in the world did they come up with these numbers other than they cooked the numbers in order to get a good number that will allow the legislature to swallow it, and yet the unintended consequence is going to be thrust upon the taxpayers of Tennessee? We are truly hoping that the governor will listen to this, because the governor ultimately is responsible for the fiscal impact of legislation on citizens through his budget. And if the governor's truly listening, then I think we have a chance to get a veto here, just based on that. Now, the legislature could override the veto, obviously, and if they're still hell-bent to do it. But if the governor said, hey, we got a bad fiscal note and we need to reevaluate it and we need to look at this more closely, let's reevaluate this next year, then we would be in a good position. So that's the status of Tennessee. It is a battle. It's one that is emotionally driven by a mother who knows that her son died of a Benadryl overdose, and yet will stand up and say it was kratom. And you have a sponsor who's looking for a notch on her belt. She just wants of legislation.
And it's such a kick in the face to all the kratom consumers in Tennessee. It's like, not only is it named after this, adult child that, OD'd on Benadryl, but, it's also it has possession charges on there.
Yeah.
I mean, you're essentially making us criminals. That's insane to me. That just doesn't make any sense.
And like you said, that survey didn't even take into account just the sheer number of chronic pain patients in Tennessee that consume kratom.
No question about that. And the thing that was extraordinary to me is that as I sat and testified in the last hearing, they allowed one opponent and one proponent. The proponent was the Tennessee Bureau of Investigations, the TBI.
Oh yeah.
And their representative was talking out of his rear end when asked, does kratom make you euphoric? Oh yes, it does. On what? Who says that? Other than bad science or bad opinions of people. But he said it as though it were an absolute fact. But the thing that really got me was he said that they cannot tell the difference between a natural and a synthetic product. And he said TBI did not have the equipment. They would have to buy the equipment, and he was trying to argue. The very interesting thing is that'll elevate the fiscal note. We can't afford it, so therefore we should ban it. I mean, this is ridiculous. The ban will cost magnitudes more than even if they had to buy the equipment. But here's the truth. TBI absolutely has the capability, because the machines that you use to detect the difference between kratom and the synthetic is a standard modern forensic toxicology and drug identification machine. It is a LC-MS/MS machine. They have it. And he sat there and said they didn't have the machinery. Now, what they may not have is the kratom method. That just means it's a software add-on. And you add it on to the software, and then it will tell you. But for him to sit there, you could tell that he had no idea.
He probably has no idea. Yeah, he has no idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's
that guy, if I remember correctly, he was at the first hearing. And what stuck out to me was when he said, give us something to police.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like he's begging for something to police. Like, you got enough stuff on your plate. You want to add a plant to it?
Well, he can't even my thing is 7-OH has been on the shelves since whenever they started, coming out on the market, and they haven't done anything to enforce regulation that's already here. Like, I think this is all just a piece of paper.
Yeah. And the bottom line is that Tennessee already maintains the machinery that's needed and has the analytical capability across multiple agencies, not just the TBI. They have access to multiple machines that could have this testing capability, and it includes TBI and the state public health laboratory. They have these machines that are necessary to do this testing. The issue is not the machinery infrastructure, it's whether the state has validated methods and allocated their resources for specific compounds like kratom. That's a software update. So,
I guarantee you he has, not only does he have no idea, but the legislation has no, like Tennessee literally is just run by people that have no idea.
right.
They're banking on people not being educated around the topic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know?
And you saw during the hearing, people were, and this is typical, Googling kratom.
Yeah.
And there were some interesting questions that were asked based on that Googling that was going on. And we have to deal with that in every legislative hearing. And I don't blame the legislators a lot, although they really should prior to the hearing.
Right. And not during the hearing.
Right. And they all have staff members who can prepare them,
Yeah.
not paying attention to it. So,
And then they Googling the FDA and kratom webpage. When I see that, I always, well, not always, but here recently, I started going to X and tagging Dr. McCary and the FDA and saying, for the love of this nation, update the kratom and FDA webpage.
right. So next steps in Tennessee, we got a Senate hearing. I don't think that that's going to go any different, although it could. We're fighting hard to get someone to ask for a revised fiscal note. If that happens, it upsets the apple cart because someone has to account in the budget with an official document. Right now, it's just our claiming that the fiscal note is different than it should be. So we'll see how that plays out, but we're hoping the governor will listen to us. And we've already made inroads there, having conversations. I had a great conversation with the chief of staff to the governor. They're interested. He has already shared the defects that we see in the fiscal note with the governor. So maybe there's a chance here that we can get that done. So that's Tennessee. Another one to show you how corrupt the process is in Kentucky. In the last day of the session, a ban provision just says kratom is banned, was inserted into the revenue bill, which is a must-pass piece of legislation. No hearings, no notice of hearings, no opportunity for public comment, nothing like that. They just stuck it in and railroaded it through in a must-pass piece of legislation. The good news is that the governor has the chance to review all of this, and he has a line item veto. He doesn't have to veto the entire revenue bill. He can strike the provision that relates to kratom, and he can challenge the legislature to override him. But if he says, hey, there wasn't a single hearing that was held, there was no public comment that was given, there are serious questions based on the federal position that's banning all kratom isn't the right solution to the problem. All of the fiscal costs that we've already identified over in Tennessee will apply equally in Kentucky, because in that region, the Appalachian region, the number of opioid abusers and deaths is highest it's ever been. So there's a real reason from a public policy perspective to have kratom available to people. So we're working hard. We encourage everyone to be emailing the governors in both of those states to make sure that we get our voices heard. The more, the better. And so I encourage it. And the same problem to a different degree occurred in Kansas. You have a legislature that didn't listen. They weren't interested in listening. And so they rammed through, although it was a close vote in the House when it was sent. The good news of that close vote is that it gives the governor the opportunity to look at this. And if she's persuaded that there are unanswered questions about this, she could veto it. So I think that getting emails into the governor is very important. To swamp that office with opposition to this gives us a foundation. We have some experts that are working with the governor's office right now to explain why this is bad legislation, why they need to fix it. So we're hopeful that we'll get a favorable response from the governor in the form of a veto, and again, challenge the legislature to override it, but based on good information, good scientific information and of course the fiscal note, it would be great. So I think that that's the where we are right now and those are the hotspot states, by the way, those three, and we just need to keep up the fight along the way. Some good news that occurred is that Idaho killed its ban bill, which we think is terrific. There are some other states that are churning here. South Carolina, there were great advocates that showed up, and
Yeah.
they
They
told.
were.
Now there's an interesting thing that's going on here. Of course, the 70H Gals podcast were criticizing the fact that advocates aren't showing up and that people should get off their butts and all of that. I obviously was offended by that on behalf of all the consumers who do show up. And you look at what happened in Idaho, you look at what happened in South Carolina.
Yeah.
You see that people are showing up.
And there was two people here in Tennessee. I mean, we had but they don't let you, Tennessee doesn't let you talk like all these other places, I guess.
Right.
But
There were a lot of advocates in Tennessee that were there. In fact, I was walking down the hallway when we were visiting some member offices, and we had a group of people with us, and a group of advocates were sitting there, and they said, "There's Mac Haddo," and they started waving to me. And these other people say, "Well, how do they know you?" These are advocates. These are the Kratom advocates that, I don't know. The BAE and Robin Graham say, don't get off their butts. A stunning hypocrisy.
Well, I got off my butt and flew over there.
I know that's right.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that they criticize the Kratom community is self-serving, because obviously what Robin was really trying to say is, please come join our organization because we're trying to rally people. And it was an interesting admission. She said that they'd been in business for about a year and didn't have many advocates signing up. They don't represent many advocates. But here's the really good part that if all of us as a community should be offended by, is to listen to the Seven Hope Alliance people try to claim victory in Idaho, for example. Of the dozens and dozens and dozens of witnesses that showed up over 3 hearings, 2 7OH advocates, 2. And they claim, we did it. They did not do it. They are the problem. They are not the solution.
Absolutely.
And the fact that they want to me, it's stolen valor. When our Kratom advocates, natural Kratom leaf advocates, stand up and they advocate for the natural plant, having the 7OH people steal that and act like they did that, we are against this chemically manipulated, deliberately engineered opioid in the form of 7OH products. I mean, it's amazing to me that
Stolen valor.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think my personal view is anyone who wants to get aligned with the 7OH community is doing a disservice to the natural leaf Kratom community. They are dooming us every time they say, with this so-called open-minded view, we can see both sides of it. That's the Madeline Sklar's nonsense. There are no two sides. You have one side or the other. You are for the natural leaf Kratom plant, or you are for chemically engineered, deliberately engineered opioids that are ruining this community and put consumers at significant risk. You are supporting a product that came onto the marketplace that deceived consumers, claiming it was a Kratom product. This is the kind of thing that is destroying the credibility of the Kratom industry when you have these self-serving profiteers that are jumping into the fray here now. And I know that I have not won I'm not on the Christmas card list of Amanda Rayner anymore, but she's a 7OH advocate. And she sat there and said, we should stop these people that are the packaging 7OH products as Smurfs and appealing to children. And you look at the company that she works for, and you look at the products that they market. The majority of them appeal to children. The packaging, the kinds of names. They have one that's called 7 Rose Oreos. It says cookies and cream on it. And then, is that not for Oreos?
My goodness.
This is the height of hypocrisy. And yet they'll say with a straight face, there's no difference. Mac's making a big deal of this. Yes, I am. I'm making a big deal of hypocrisy.
You have to pick a side.
Yeah.
You have to pick a side.
Yep.
You do.
Yes, there is an argument for people's personal choices, personal freedoms, body anonymous, whatever that word is, body autonomy. I don't know, whatever that word is. There's that side,
Mhm.
but you got this side, of 7OH killing kratom.
Right.
That's literally what it's doing.
And
It
I
is-
don't care what people put in their body. If they want to go do whatever, that's fine. But you don't see me advocating for every single thing people can put in their body. I advocate for kratom,
Yeah.
and 7OH is literally destroying the kratom name.
Well,
Destroying.
it is, but there's another element to this that I think is important. The reason that 7OH is destroying the kratom name is that people are thinking that they're consuming a kratom
Yes.
product, and they get hooked on what is an opioid. They show up at a substance abuse center and they say, I'm taking kratom. And
Yep.
that gets reported.
Yep.
And then there are people who are dying because they overdosed on 7OH, which is a chemically engineered opioid, and they die, and they say it's kratom. You look at the CDC's report, even though they actually did, if you got past the sensationalized headlines, it actually said that the spike is because of 7OH.
Yeah.
So this isn't about, in my opinion, a personal choice about what you consume. It's the way that the products are manufactured. It is the way that the products are designed in order to give you that fast high. And the best evidence of all is that the 7OH community was not content with taking and chemically manipulating the kratom alkaloid or metabolite 7OH into a highly concentrated form and then letting it go through your first pass metabolism system. That wasn't good enough for them because it didn't steal enough of the natural kratom leaf marketplace. So they changed it to sublingual strips and fast dissolving tablets, bypassing your first pass metabolism, going right to your bloodstream, hitting you like a freight train, fast euphoric high, which kratom doesn't produce, a fast crash, and then you're back addicted. And that's the problem.
That was me and oxycodone.
And
Yeah.
I don't favor anyone being exposed to a high risk product that has
Right.
those kinds of effects when they're masquerading as natural leaf kratom products.
And you hear 7OH advocates all the time, especially on social media. It's like one of their, bullet points is, 1 billion doses have been sold, no adverse events. It's like those adverse events are being reported as kratom events. That's why. That's why there's no. And as far as like deaths and stuff, I mean, it's killing people's like livelihoods. Like they're spending every dime they have on it. They're losing, their jobs. It's insane. It's insane.
Fracturing. Not only is it fracturing the kratom community, it's fracturing families.
Right.
It's fracturing people's bank accounts, people's retirement monies, people's kids. The amount I've received thousands upon thousands of comments or hundreds of private messages about what it's doing to their life. And
Yeah.
I cannot for the good conscience in me, there's no way you will never get me to advocate for 7OH.
Never.
Well, and I think you see the various arguments that are made. Miss Ross from Seven Hope Alliance was on social media yesterday, and she was saying that the safety of 7OH has been affirmed by Eustace and Henningfield. And she cites the 8-factor analysis. The 8-factor analysis that was conducted by Dr. Henningfield and the separate study by Dr. Eustace had to do with natural leaf kratom products with naturally occurring 7OH levels, low levels. It had nothing to do with 7OH that is chemically manipulated and becoming the predominant ingredient in a product. Nothing to do with that. And the idea that she could say that, and she claims that she's the preeminent 7OH scientist in the field. Well, there must not be much competition, because for someone to say that and as irresponsibly characterizing and mischaracterizing the research done by Jack Henningfield and Dr. Marilyn Eustace is crazy, because that's not what they said. But I've heard her say it before. She has said that the 8-factor analyses done by Henningfield in 2016 and affirmed in 2021 affirms that 7OH is safe. 7OH in a chemically manipulated, engineered opioid form did not exist before 2024 at the earliest. And for her to say that those 8 factors, which did examine the trace amounts of 7-OH in a natural leaf product, found them to be safe, is ridiculous. But she'll say anything, apparently, in order to justify the 7-OH presence in the community. And none of them like to face up to the reality that they had a duty when they entered the marketplace to have had a reasonable basis for safety. And their own chief scientific officer at Hart stood up in a forum and said, we didn't have anything. We're hoping to have it in 2025 and 2026, which of course they haven't produced. So this is a real problem for the kratom community. But moving on to some other states, Rhode Island. Rhode Island had April 1st, we have the reversal and repeal of the ban on kratom, and now it's open for companies to register and sell kratom products. Representative Michelle McGaugh, who is a pharmacist, put in an additional bill before the actual KCPA became effective on April 1st, and she argues that, oh my goodness, we need to put kratom behind the counter, which is under the law required, and in a locked case, which she knows the retailers aren't going to do because it's an additional expense. And they're not going to do that kind of nonsense. And by the way, how big a case? They don't know. There's all kinds of variables in that, but it's obvious, deliberate that she's trying to do this to block kratom sales in the state of Rhode Island. And interestingly, in her testimony, when she was challenged, she couldn't produce. She said, "Oh, the health department says there are kratom deaths." And Representative Kennedy asked her in the hearing, "Well, did you distinguish between synthetics and the natural kratom leaf and the cause of that?" Oh, I didn't ask for that detail. Again, mixing together kratom and 7-OH or other synthetics. And then she said, when she was asked by Representative Kennedy, well, do you think that this standard should apply to other products? She goes, anything that hits the mu-opioid receptor should be behind the counter. Well, guess what? Cheese.
Well, yeah.
The mu-opioid receptors. So we better put cheese and all of its derivative products. We certainly have to have pizza behind the counter
Could you imagine?
in a locked case. I mean, this is there's a term for this. It's batshit crazy.
Yes.
And that's what she's saying. And she says it with a straight face. And of course, the truth is she's a pharmacist. She doesn't like kratom because guess what kratom is? It's a competing product to pharmaceutically grade and prescription medications for acute and chronic pain.
It's competition.
That's all it is. That's all it is. And you know, she's irresponsible in the way that she's approaching this. Last year, after the hearing was held, she had made the statement that we need more science. So and I'd already testified, so I couldn't respond to that. So I'm out in the hallway with her, and I shook her hand. I was respectful, and I said, I would be glad to send you the library of the more than $100 million that was invested by the National Institutes on Drug Abuse in kratom research. I will send you that. And she turned to me rudely and said, there is nothing you can send me, nothing that will change my mind.
Okay.
This is a legislator who is duty bound. I mean, she's in the same category as Senator Mike McKell in Utah, who is got a closed mind, not willing to listen to facts, and will spout one lie after another in order to promote their viewpoint. That's where we sit with some of these people. So it obviously is a very important thing for us to continue this fight in order to educate the other legislators to show how ridiculous the positions are of some of these legislators are who have drunk the Kool-Aid, and they're now on the bandwagon of anti-kratom activists, which includes medical professionals, some of the substance abuse professionals who you just see the threat to this, and we need to fight back. So that's part of what we're doing.
Laura had asked any updates on Iowa.
I'm just going to get to that. Iowa, we're still working there. We've got the holiday recess. We think we're making progress with some of the key legislators on this. So I'm relatively optimistic that we're going to prevail in the legislative process without getting a ban. But as we learned in Kentucky, anything can happen at any moment, right? So we're just being diligent about this and continuing to fight. This is going to take a little bit of effort on our part, but we appreciate the consumers that have emailed because that's what slowed this process down. It has gotten the attention of these legislators, and for anybody who thinks that, wow, we're really asking them to do a lot, and we are, that their voices aren't being heard. You're wrong. They are being heard. I had a legislator in Iowa tell me that they received over 1,000 emails in their account. A legislator in Tennessee told me he'd gotten over 400. So these are making a difference, and we deeply, deeply appreciate the advocates that are showing up and that they're calling and sending in emails and participating in the hearings when they can do so. I think it's fabulous, and so I think that we should be recognizing, and we should be helping advocates. We should not be in this game of saying, "Oh, you people don't get off your butts." And by the way, I made it clear on the video rebuttal that I did, and I hope everyone will go watch it, to the 70H gals, that when Robin Graham has the audacity to say people should get off their butts, her quote, "You should get off your butts and get out and advocate." There were 7 opportunities in the state of Montana where she lives, 7 opportunities for her to show up. Some of them didn't even require her to get off her butt. She could sit in her chair and video in her testimony. She was AWOL at every single one of those. Every single one. And the people that I was talking to that I saw testify, none of them were BAE members. This is talk about stolen valor. This is a group that is just trying to, advocate for people to give them money for no other purpose than for them to benefit from that without an output, without a benefit. I welcome every voice. I do. But if you're just dividing the community, accusing them of not doing something that they are, just because they don't do it in the same way you do it, and Lord help us if we do it the same way that Robin does it, well, she doesn't show up. She doesn't get off her butt. She just wants everybody else to do it. So obviously frustrating to me personally, because I see people. I stand shoulder to shoulder with advocates from around the country. I remember in Ohio, and that's another state where we have tremendous outpouring of people that come. I'm standing in line to get into the State House for the last hearing, and this Kratom advocate taps me on the shoulder, shakes my hand, and said, "We first met in the Ohio Board of Pharmacy meeting." And that's where we had 330 advocates that showed up. And that's in the middle of the day. The Board of Pharmacy said, "We're done. We're going to pull this," because they heard enough to convince them that it was a fool's errand. Now they're back at it, obviously. Yeah. But right now it's just on 70H. They haven't yet announced their regular rulemaking proceeding. We expect them to do so shortly, but they haven't done it yet. We just had a notice in Nevada where they are going to have a work session on April the 16th on whether to ban Kratom again. So this will be the 3rd time we've been through this with them. And I talked to the executive director of the Board of Pharmacy in Nevada yesterday, and he was very pleasant. He said, "Yeah, we're back at it again, and we're glad to receive all this information." But he told me it was the Attorney General's office that was pushing it, and that was interesting. The same thing. Derivative in Kansas, it was the Attorney General that compelled the legislators to do this. So we're obviously getting, and it's all about 70H, but they're conflating everything. So
right.
It's easy.
So there's apparently some sort of something happening behind the scenes where these attorney generals are getting these notifications. Got to ban Kratom. Got to ban Kratom, because like even the Attorney General for Alabama talked about how there's still Kratom in their community. But the sheriff posted up on X the products that were found, and it was 70H, Kava, and tianeptine. And then the sheriff told me, Jen and I, he commented back to us on X and said that, well, it tested positive for Kratom.
At least they have testing machines.
Well, true.
We can ship them up.
That's a fact. Can we borrow them here in Tennessee?
Man.
Which I'll say it again, Tennessee, they were not telling the truth. They have those machines.
Right. Yeah.
So Mandy wants to know any tips of the best ways to advocate. She's from Tennessee.
Yeah, there's not always a silver bullet. I can tell you that when you are able to, showing up is important. Even when you don't get to speak, just being present, being able to be there and aware, let the legislators be aware that there is support is very helpful. And when you do go down there to the state capitol, try to take some time to go visit offices. You can look up the committee members, and you can then go knock on their door and talk to the legislative assistants, and enough people go in, they report to their bosses, even if the boss isn't there. I think that's the first step.
And they're all super nice in Tennessee. They even have like a brochure that you can get in the front that shows all the listings of all the where they're at, a map. And I mean, they're super nice. And if the reps are in the office, sometimes they even come out and talk to you. I
Right,
mean,
what happened
it's
to
every,
Jamie, Kelly, and Deborah.
yeah, I mean, it was really, really, I mean, I was surprised. Like, I didn't realize that we could just go in at any time, and go talk to reps. But after the hearing, I mean, me and Deborah went and we did as much as our crippled butts could with our canes. We went to as many offices as we could. And I mean, it was a really good experience. I mean, I'll say that. So, yeah, if you're in Tennessee, definitely try it.
So everyone's hearing the voice of experience of how you do it, and thank you to both of you for being there, knocking on those doors and telling the story. So that's one way to do it. Obviously, when you do show up, understand that there'll be a number of limitations. Sometimes the agenda is so crowded you don't get to speak at all. Sometimes you only get a minute, maybe 2 minutes. You just have to live with that. I've traveled to multiple hearings where they've canceled them right when the hearing started, or they say, oh, we're only going to allow for 5 people to speak, and depending on where you signed up, that you get screwed in that process. But we still have to be there. In every case, including where you go down there, use the email system and certainly express your viewpoint and tell your testimony. Give your personal story, because it's not as effective to say, I oppose this bill, thank you. I oppose this bill because Kratom has changed my life. It's benefited me. It's saved my life. Whatever your personal experience is, that's important to share, because it will find its way to, at some point, either as a collective where the legislative assistant says, hey, we got 400 emails on this issue, or it may be, hey, here's one that really stuck out, kind of thing. Go to their Facebook pages and post. I think that's also important. You don't even have to they all have Facebook posts. Go to their Facebook pages, go to their page and comment, whether they've commented on it or not. Say, I'm just reaching out to you. I hope you'll listen on Kratom. And I think that's an important mechanism, because those legislators watch those Facebook pages. So I think that's an important way to reach out and express viewpoints. And they're not going to get banned, by the way. You can just go and work on that. So just give your viewpoint. The other thing,
13-hydroxy.
I'm sorry?
What is 13-hydroxy?
Well, I think that's another. I've heard there's 8-hydroxy, 11-hydroxy, 13-hydroxy. They're just upping the synthetic variables in these product formulations in order to really get people high, and that it's just crazy. The other thing I'd recommend on the advocacy is actually pick up the phone and call their office, and that helps too. Because this is something that really does make a difference. In 2016, when we were fighting the DEA public affairs officer told me, after they had withdrawn the application for scheduling in October 13th, the public relations officer said that they received 6,000 phone calls. They had never had that number of calls for any substance that was recommended for scheduling prior to that date. Now, contrary to what some say, they shut down the switchboard. That's not true. We did shut down the switchboard in 1994 of the U.S. Capitol, and I think that's what was being conflated by the Robin Graham under the DSHEA Act, and that's where it was a crazy situation. They had to reconfigure the U.S. Capitol switchboard because so many people called in about dietary supplements. But they got 6,000 calls, which is a significant number, and then subsequently got 23,000 comments, 99% of which were positive for Kratom when the DEA opened it up for public comment in 2016. All of that shows the power of advocacy, right? Because
I thought it was 80,000 comments.
No, that was when the UN Commission on Narcotic Drugs opened up the scheduling internationally, and that was years later.
2021.
Yeah, there were 80,000 people that submitted comments. Now, I don't know what I have no idea what Robin Graham's talking about, that we don't have advocates that are standing up. I mean, my goodness, but it takes effort, right? It doesn't take taking your bony finger of blame. It takes encouraging people, giving them the the actual mechanism in order to express yourself. But we got a favorable decision from the DEA in 2016. We got a favorable decision from the Committee on Drug Dependence at the UN Commission, and I've been to several UN Commission meetings since then and talked to people. We've done these workshops for the UN Commission, and I hear the leaders of that group say all the time, "We're not going back to Kratom." So it's because they saw the truth being actually delivered to them with that kind of an outcry. So advocacy works.
I just wanted to answer Mandy's question real quick. When you go about calling the representatives, I usually just say, my name is Jennifer Gillis. I'm a Tennessee resident, and I'm asking you to oppose this bill because, and
Your
tell them,
story.
go into your story. And it's really super easy, and they're super nice when you call. Some reps even, I've gotten like an email from the assistants giving me like a Google form to fill out and send to the rep for any concerns. So yeah, just your name, tell them you're a Tennessee resident, and tell them why you want them to oppose the bill.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what you've described is exactly what happens at the state level. Now, some states, the representatives don't have a staffer. Some will have interns for the legislative session, but not when they're out of session. So you just have to, during that process, understand that it may not be perfect, but you do the best you can. Leave a voicemail, whatever it takes, because it will get noticed. Now, it's substantially different at the federal level. And my recommendation to people when they call to the federal office, and they should call their own representative, there are two levels of office contacts you can make. One is at the local level. They all have district offices, both the senators and the representatives, and you call, and you can do exactly what you do with the state legislative office, and they tend to be just as receptive. At the federal level, when you call the Washington, D.C. offices, you're getting a receptionist. And what you want to say to that receptionist is, I want to talk to the legislative assistant in charge of FDA stuff. And then they'll tell you, oh, well, that person's not available.
That's what we did last year in DC.
Yeah, and
in April.
Rarely is that person going to be available. Now, sometimes legitimately, sometimes as a matter of office policy, they never let the calls go through. They want to get a message. So then you have the opportunity to say, please, and get the person's name and say, please have Jonathan call me because I want to talk about this bill related to Kratom. That's all you need to say. Yeah. And then when they don't call you back, you call them back and say, Jonathan was supposed to call me, haven't heard from him, and I'd like to talk about Kratom. And then say, could you give me his email or her email address? Get the email address. And then you can email that legislative assistant, and then you will have broken through the barriers to get to those people. And that's where the boss is going to hear that the legislative assistant's going to go in and say, hey man, we got 50 calls about this, and it's obviously an important issue. And I think
Adam wants to know, he says, is it possible that the FDA is purposely not doing anything, just letting it all happen, basically? Well, we'll just sit back and let it all play out type of attitude, pretty much?
No, I'll tell you why I don't believe that's true. The FDA actually, through the HHS Office of Legislative Affairs, asked the Energy and Commerce Committee to find a sponsor for the bill to ban 7-OH. And they selected Congressman Bilirakis, who did the HR 8000, which banned 7-OH. It was done at the request of the administration because of their frustration that the DEA isn't moving fast enough. And so this bill that was filed by Congressman Bilirakis is a signal to the DEA, get off your butts. Sorry to borrow the phrase from Robin. Get off your butts and do something. I have a sense of humor. I just want you to know, not a good one. But that's what the signal is. And if they don't, then the legislation is likely to move through. So, I think that as much as frustrating as the FDA is, and HHS sometimes, at least they're aware of this issue. Now, where I have a beef with the FDA is that they are not yet in a position where they are going to require the staff level attorneys and the career staff in the office that controls the FDA and Kratom webpage, because that webpage is incorrect factually and scientifically, and from a regulatory standpoint does what they know it's not supposed to do, which is to have an impact on public policy. And the reason I say it's not allowed to do that, foreseeably they know it is that if they do have knowledge that what their statement says foreseeably could be used by a local or state government to enact a policy, they have to go through regular rulemaking to justify what they're saying. They never did that. That's a year-long process. They just slapped it up there and they expressed their opinion, but that's not the way it sounds. And I had to answer this question in the state of Tennessee.
Yeah, you did.
When the representative asked, well, I'm in law school and I can read. Well, you can read all day long, pal. And I didn't say this to him, but you're not reading correctly. You need a comprehension test, because he and another representative were targeting this, saying this is what the FDA and Kratom webpage says. And the truth is that Kratom on that webpage is talking about whether or not it has gone through the processes that the FDA requires for dietary ingredients and dietary supplements. And the truth is 11 Kratom companies have done that. And it's the burden's on the FDA after they complete that NDIN process under the DSHEA Act. Then it's the FDA has to go out and slap them down. There's been one enforcement action pursuant to an NDIN, which was back in 2015. Hasn't been another one since. And there have been multiple NDINs. So Kratom products are on the marketplace legally today. Now, there was a second enforcement action not related to an NDIN with feel-free products, and that lawsuit was in place for 3 years, and the Department of Justice withdrew the lawsuit. So if this is as dangerous as the anti-Kratom people are saying, why the hell is the FDA and the DOJ withdrawing a lawsuit on a product like that when they did a seizure action? And it's because, and this is the key, the burden is on the FDA. They have to prove whatever they're saying. And in this particular case, the FDA's anti-Kratom narrative fell apart when they conducted their FDA dose findings. And I found it absurd that Dean Francis, who's now become the self-proclaimed champion of the anti-Kratom movement, was putting up this infographic about what the defects of the FDA dose finding study was. First off, it's now a peer-reviewed published article, right? But some person, not an authority, not any credible source, had just put up their view of why this is not a good definition of a safety. And Dean Francis was touting it as though it's the gospel truth. It's not. The fact is that in order to conduct the study in the first place, the FDA had to have a reasonable basis for safety of the product. They can't conduct a human clinical trial and know that it's going to kill someone, right? Or cause a serious adverse event. They did a study about the dose at which there could be a potential serious adverse event. They're allowed to do that knowing the basis is that the product is safe. Now they're just trying to figure out how much of the product might cause an adverse event. So they started at 1 gram, they got up to 12 grams, which is an enormous dose, as we all know, in a 5-minute period. And what did they find? The placebo group and the Kratom group both experienced nausea, not considered a significant adverse event. But they mock that in this infographic from this uninformed person and say, oh, this isn't a scientific study. It doesn't prove safety. It's just associated with risks. Well, I'm sorry. What is the difference? If you were looking to find the safety of a product, it's about finding the risks of the product from ingesting it. And they want to change the vernacular to say, oh, it's just about risk. It's not about safety. I'm sorry. Are you with Representative McGaugh? You could get elected in her district. That's how dumb you are. This is the kind of thing that just is infuriating when it comes right down to it. So, but again, we have to fight. We have to make sure we correct the record where it's appropriate, and we're doing that. I think that we have some challenges, and that's where we have to go forward. Adam asked about do all Kratom companies require an NDIN? Based on your product formulation, if you believe that you did not have the grandfathered status of Kratom, so naturally Kratom products, but any product that's been altered as an extract in any way has to be then submitted to an NDIN. Now, there is a good argument that someone could make is that, well, there are other companies that have submitted NDINs, but the requirement for an NDI, the new dietary ingredient notification, is you submit for your product the safety data associated with that particular it being the product that you market. And then you go through the process. At the end of 75 days, the FDA can object to it. and then you can go on the market, and then the burden's on them, the FDA, to take you off the market if they determine that your product is unsafe. So the investment in the safety data for an NDIN is significant, but it's required along the way. But natural kratom leaf products, there is a good argument that they existed prior to the DSHEA Act of 1994, and therefore are generally recognized as safe. The FDA doesn't believe that, by the way, but I think there's a good argument for it. And certainly when you hear the commissioner of the FDA stand in a public forum nationally and say our focus is not on natural leaf kratom products, it's on these chemically manipulated opioids called 7-OH and other synthetics. If there was this significant safety problem that the Dean Francises of the world claim that there is for natural leaf kratom products, all kratom products, then you would see people dropping like flies, and you would see the FDA all over it.
Yeah.
Now, here's the interesting thing. The FDA has an adverse event reporting system that accepts every report of every death and every adverse event, and they evaluate them. And by the way, when you go on that database, they tell you, do not rely upon this for being a definitive analysis of the safety or lack thereof of any substance. They accept the adverse event reports, and then they look for clusters of adverse events or deaths that are associated with the consumption of a product or a counterindication with another product. And so if they find a contraindication that kratom consumed with Benadryl would cause a problem, then the FDA will require the prescription manufacturer, not the dietary ingredient, the prescription manufacturer has to put a black box warning on their label saying that do not consume this product with kratom. So how many black box warnings has the FDA required based on extensive experience from their adverse event reporting system over the past 10 years? How many? Goose egg. Not a single one. So if the test here is what the safety of the kratom product is on the marketplace, then you would have seen a black box warning, or you would have seen a specific warning required on all kratom products that this product will kill you if you ingest it. The FDA hasn't required that. So they can generally say, oh, we don't consider it to be as safe as a therapeutic agent. That's fine. That's true because they haven't evaluated it. They haven't proven it one way or the other. And that's why the FDA and kratom webpage is so badly needs to be corrected, because it conveys the wrong data, the wrong message to regulators around the country, and it needs to be fixed. There's no question about that.
Yeah, I agree on that. Michael Riviera is saying that, I know, I saw you pin that, Jen. Not feeling like I'm being heard by anyone. I'm literally alone here in Iowa. I have people that want me to be the face of Iowa advocacy, but don't want to be the voice. Sad but true. I know that, right? Better Botanics Health people are Iowa, right?
Well, we're working with GKC and Botanics for Better Health and Wellness on assigning lobbyists. So there is a lobbying team that's representing. We have to file, and who do they get paid by? It's Botanics for Better Health and Wellness. But we're cooperating with Iowa. We've had lots of advocacy outreach, and so Michael, I'm sorry you're feeling alone. You are not. We're stepping up our advocacy base, and we're scaling it based on the reports we're getting from the lobbying team. So stand by, troops are coming. They're already there, and you may just not be aware of it. And I apologize, we're not communicating as well as we should. We're being overwhelmed.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Doing the best we can. We're reacting to specific areas where we need to get in there. We may not be as elegant about it as we need to be to inform people, but just let us catch up. We're there, and we're going to be fighting in Iowa because it's important that we don't let Iowa fall either. And so we're active there, and we'll continue to work with you. And Michael, just send me an email, and I'll make sure you get plugged into our advocacy group in Iowa, and you'll know there are other people out there helping. But I'm glad to hear you say an important thing, that people want you to step up. Leadership is important, and sometimes leaders are chosen in the field of battle. They get their appointments in the middle of the battle. We try to be as prepared as we can be, and appointing you as a field captain is probably not the best experience you're going to have in your life, but we're in there fighting with you, I promise.
And then Metalhead Gigi, what's up? She says, is there anything happening with Indiana?
No, but there have been very, very encouraging discussions with legislators there who are interested in looking at repealing that ban, asking questions about it. I meet with them in what's called National Conference of State Legislators meetings, and we're having those interactions. The one that worries me more in terms of the slowness of action are two states, Illinois and Massachusetts.
Yeah.
These states that you think that it's like it takes 10 years to get a bill passed. And there's a good side to that because they're not going to pass a 708 bill either. But, I have told the lobbyists in both of those states, do not think that this is a retirement program. This is about getting something done. And as slow as this process is, we don't need lobbyists reporting to us about how slow it is. We need lobbyists to be a catalyst to jumpstart the activity. So we're delivering that message now. I think that in both Illinois and Massachusetts, I'm hoping that we can move it along better because what's happening in those states, you're seeing a groundswell of local bans because nothing's happening at the state level. And you get these local county and city members, they're saying, council members saying, well, we don't know what to do, so we're just going to ban it. And they get their law enforcement people coming in because they've sat on some national call that says kratom is bad. I remember in, I think it was in, well, I'm not sure, Kansas or Illinois, where a police officer stood up and said that it had to be banned. And one of the council members said, well, how many arrests have you made? Oh, how many arrests? How many kids are you seeing that are exposed to this? Well, we really don't have any stores that are selling kratom in our city. What the hell are you doing here then?
I can't tell you how many hearings we've sat in and they've had the sheriffs or get up there and testify that, well, we're not having any problems in our community with kratom.
We're not seeing it. Yeah, we're not seeing it.
We just want to prevent it. This is the nonsense that they're peddling because they've been on a call with some other law enforcement people, and this is their cause celeb now, and they don't know what they're talking about. And yet, it's, hey, that's on my list of things to do, so I'm going to go out and say that kratom is bad. And they have this mythology that kids are going into stores and they're grabbing all the kratom they can. They're going out, and I sat in a hearing in Mississippi about 4 years ago, and the chief of the Office of Narcotics in the Mississippi government was testifying. And again, I'd already testified, so I couldn't rebut it. And he said that he had personally witnessed a kid come out of a convenience store, slug down a kratom drink, and immediately go into a seizure and writhe on the ground. Now, I found that interesting. So after the hearing was over, I approached him, introduced myself, and I said, I'd like to talk to you about this. And he said, great, come see me. So I did. And we spent 2 hours in a meeting. And during the course of that meeting, I said, well, I'm really curious about this experience with the product that this kid consumed that you said he immediately fell to the ground, started writhing around in a seizure. He goes, well, I actually didn't see it. He said, that was another person who reported it to me. Are you kidding? He testified before the legislature. I mean, that's the Senator McKell mode. You sit and tell lie after lie after lie, mischaracterization after mischaracterization, and you treat it like it's the truth. And
we just heard this in South Carolina this week. The cop went up there and said that a woman was begging him for money so that she could get some kratom.
Yeah,
get some kratom.
Ridiculous.
You had the TBI guy saying, "Oh, kratom causes euphoria." Absolutely, come on. This is the mythology that gets constructed about it. And I saw someone ask about, are the 7OH guys hiring lobbyists? They absolutely are. They got a lot of money. One of the major manufacturers of 7OH in Florida spent more than $1 million spreading money around the state legislature, which is why the Attorney General's emergency rule on kratom got derailed in the legislative process because they're spending money. They're hiring the best lobbyists in the world. They've got great example in Missouri. They got one of the most influential lobbyists known to man, very expensive. We could never afford him. And he's up there because he has influence with the Speaker of the House and the Senate President. I mean, we have to fight this all the time. Hopefully, and most often it does, the truth prevails. But make no mistake, they're spending a ton of money in these states with lobbyists on.
You know why they're spending a ton of money? Because they created whole populations of addicts.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Yep.
Yep.
No question about it, and that's the challenge we have. But guess what? We're winning more than losing, and it's because of the support of advocates who are telling their truthful stories, their authentic stories, as opposed to this, oh, well, I need the kratom to deal with my acute and chronic pain, which is exclusively what 7-OH is now promoting. It is a therapeutic benefit. Great, go apply for a new drug application. I have no problem whatsoever with a 7-OH manufacturer coming in and going through that process. I do have a problem when their target audience is just those addicts that they've created. And a great example of this, you see what they're peddling now. They're saying, well, we agree that all kratom should be removed from convenience stores and put into smoke shops, because that's where the 7-OH crowd goes.
Yep.
They care about the stigma for the average kratom consumer who should have access to kratom in a convenience store. And Nora Volkow from the National Institute on Drug Abuse testified to that fact and said that it should be accessible. It's a valuable harm reduction tool, potentially to help people get off of their heroin addictions and let them have access to it. But 7-OH is trading one opioid for another. And that's why they want to have it in smoke shops. And what that does is it isolates the marketplace to those people seeking treatments for chronic pain. Mm-hmm. And so they're attacking the kratom marketplace by saying it can only be sold in these smoke shops where only 21 and older can even enter the establishment. Well, I'd like to see the data. And I know it's not there. I'd like to see the data, how much shoplifting goes on.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Mac. Oh my gosh.
Give me a break.
All these articles, like, I used to have a Facebook thread before I got banned on Facebook in June of last year. I used to have a Facebook thread that was filled with all these articles that came out about, so-and-so shoplifted kratom. They would call it kratom. But if you dig deeper in the article or you looked at the photo of the video surveillance, it's 7-OH. Right. And I have tons and tons of articles with this. There's even a council member that sold it or stole it. There was a cop from Chattanooga
in Knoxville
stole it. He was in uniform on duty. That's how powerful this is.
It's like, when you have that much, when you see it that often too, and that's just the news stories that are published. There's no telling how many people are did you see this comment, Mac, about that dude in Tennessee?
Yeah. Well, the truth is that he actually was trying to help me.
Yeah. I thought so too.
He wanted to illustrate that people are criminalized for taking a product but it came across as, well, isn't that an illegal product? Shouldn't he be arrested? And the TBI guy said and say, well, no, not yet. So,
the guy that testified in South Carolina this week, he actually drunk his kratom up there on the podium. And he said that this bill would be just, I can never get the wording correct because my memory don't work that way. But he pretty much said that this right here, me doing this, is akin to me shooting up heroin in my arm right in front of you.
So Michelle McGaugh, Representative McGaugh in Rhode Island, filed a complaint against me for having an illegal substance because I showed examples of products that were illegal in the state of Rhode Island. There were 7-OH sublingual strips and dissolvable tablets as being the gas station heroin that she was talking about. And so she filed a complaint with the speaker saying that I should have been arrested for having those products.
Can you
get out of here?
So I don't know what to say other than, I have to tell you a funny story. I did some advocacy years ago with a senior group about generic drugs and advocating for generic drugs versus pharma drugs. It was called the Seniors Coalition. And the advocate that they had for the Seniors Coalition was this grandmother, and she was involved in a hotel fire and was hospitalized with smoke inhalation. So they needed someone to take her place for a period of time while she recovered. And so I recruited my mother to help with this. And she was a big advocate and she loved doing it. And she went on this tour that they were conducting around the country with where they would follow the AARP bus, which is a big promoter. They make a huge amount of money on having their own pharmacy for seniors. And they called the police in Indianapolis, and the police came and arrested my mother for having a public meeting without a permit. And they immediately released her, by the way. I mean, it was just a performative thing. But I told my mother later, I wished that they had thrown her in jail so that we could have had free Grandma Green. That was her name. It would have been great for promotional. So maybe if they arrested me, locked me in jail in Rhode Island, we could have that. We could raise money off of the fact they'd arrested me.
Oh my gosh, Mac. I mean, I tell Jen this too. She's like, I will physically chain myself to the Capitol in Tennessee.
I keep saying it.
And I'm like, we would have to raise bond money for you like we did for Shayna. Like,
but we need the money, so we need to fight these battles. But maybe that's one way of doing it. So if Representative McGaugh wants to lock me up, I don't mind spending a couple of days in jail, as long as it's just a couple of days.
Okay, so Metalhead GG wants to, what can I do to advocate without getting myself in trouble since it's not legal here?
So do not show up anywhere in a public meeting with an illegal product. You can talk about how you rely on it. Do not admit that where you get it or anything like that. Don't put yourself in harm's way. You can advocate for how it's changed your life, and you don't have to answer any questions. Saying, well, where do you get your stuff? And now some states do not permit the sale in the state, but they do not block internet sales. So you just need
Kentucky. I'm sorry.
Just do some research on it, but don't get yourself in trouble. We don't want you getting arrested because we know what the consequences of that are.
Yeah.
You end up with very serious charges. So please don't put yourself in harm's way.
Is Kentucky a possession also included? The one that they snuck in?
Yeah. Yes, it's Schedule 1.
Okay.
So definitely. Okay. I mean, they didn't. It's a one line ban kratom, and yes, it would ban possession of it's a Schedule 1 substance.
So Mandy says a local vape shop. Hold on, let me get that up there.
I got it.
A local vape shop told me a woman would come in every day and buy out the 7-OH pills, and she said they were just like opioids. He said months ago they would be after kratom soon, and he was right. Yeah, I mean that's the trend that we've seen. That's what irks the crap out of me when kratom advocates want to say that they're playing devil's advocates, pretty much. Wanting to advocate for 7-OH because their friend takes it or what have you. They're not seeing the bigger picture.
Right.
Because what we're seeing in the hearings. And our hearings have jumped up dramatically. I don't even know the word I'm trying to say. Anyway, since July of last year, Jen and I have attended over 200 hearings.
It's been insane.
And the common denominator here is the ravaging of 7-OH in these communities. So it's left up to us as kratom advocates to help educate these lawmakers the difference between the two. So, sometimes it works, sometimes it don't.
So when you hear 7-OH people get up there and try to advocate and say, "Oh, well, they're the same," this is all craziness. They're trying to act like they're different and they're not. The reason we're in the mess that we're in, and truly we are in a mess across the country, is this.
Yep.
Money. The 7-OH people stepped into a marketplace that was well regulated, well controlled, and that was getting the message through to federal regulators. And in 2024-25, depending on who you believe, 7-OH enters the marketplace. It is a chemically engineered opioid. It creates euphoria. It has effects that natural kratom leaf does not have, and it created this problem. The reason we're in this fight, and there's no one that can justify it. And when I hear the 7-OH gals try to justify, oh, well, we just let anybody have whatever they want, we're not going to be the arbiters of what they're doing. They overlook the fact that the 7-OH manufacturers violated federal law when they entered the marketplace.
Yep.
They don't want to talk about that. That the 7-OH products are chemically manipulated. They are not the same. They don't want to talk about that. That 7-OH hits you differently in your mu opioid receptors than does natural kratom. It doesn't give you euphoria. 7-OH does. It doesn't have the kinds of absolutely strong pain control that kratom has. They're an opioid. They don't want to talk about that. They just want to talk about this. Oh, we're libertarians, or we express a libertarian viewpoint, and we think everybody should do what they want to do. That's fine if you do not have all of these adverse effects. And this is one thing. This is one thing. It's about chasing the almighty dollar. It has nothing to do with the people that are out there and the experiences they're having. It's about how much money is being rung up in the cash register by the 7-OH people. When I hear Miss Ross get up there and claim that she's the most experienced 7-OH manufacturer, or a scientist, I'm sorry, in the space. Where is one? Just show me one peer-reviewed published article. Just one. What kind of experience does she have as a so-called expert in this space? She is peddling the big 7-OH lie. And that's where we have to take charge of this whole issue and say, enough. You don't have standing in this argument in the 7-OH community to claim that you are anything but what you are, which is an opioid. And Amanda Rayner this morning on the Tea Leaf Facebook page sat and said, accused me of misrepresenting what 7-OH was. And she said you're saying that it is made from pull shock chemicals. And she said, you and Dr. McCurdy said that. And this is astounding to me because I didn't say it. I quoted Vince Sanders. Vince Sanders said it. He said,
yeah,
we use highly concentrated chlorine, much like what you use to shock your backyard pool. Vince Sanders, not Chris McCurdy, not Mac Haddo. We're quoting him. And by the way, he's accurately describing the process by which they produce 7-OH products. They catalyze the 7-OH material, because if you were to do it, it'd be hundreds of pounds of kratom material to make one tablet. So they have to chemically manipulate it and create the 7-OH products. And for Amanda Rayner and for Madeline Sklar and for the rest of that group to hide behind this nonsense that, oh, it's not the same at all. No, we're not making, it's not pull shock chemicals. And Madeline Sklar mocked me for saying it on her podcast. That podcast is a sham when it comes to claiming to be an advocacy for the kratom gals. It is the 7-OH gals. They've made themselves that. They need to change their name. That's my encouraging thing for them. Now, I did offer to them this morning, again, that they can come on our webinar on Monday night, and I will give them the floor, and they can ask questions without restraint. I'm not going to ask them to get on a phone call, what I record, and I'm not going to ask them for the timestamps on videos. I'm going to ask them to simply have a discussion. And let's talk about these things and then answer questions that are asked of them. And of course, they've refused to do that. They don't want to do that because that would expose them to having to be accountable for the questions and the comments of the public. So this is they accuse me of dividing the community, and I make it clear. Yes, if we're dividing against the natural leaf kratom community that needs to be protected, and the 7-OH crowd that have intruded into the space and falsely marketed their products as kratom, that are now trying to carry the whole argument based on, 7-OH is naturally produced by the liver, as though it's the same chemical composition. It's not. And Miss Ross continues to peddle that nonsense. And so that's really important. So I think that just the fact that they're not willing to have that discussion, the fact they're not willing to have me on to at least give a counter viewpoint. They invited Wendy Forsberg, who's the Seven Hope Alliance National Advocacy Coordinator.
Wednesday.
She was on a couple of times, but they won't let me come on and talk about a different viewpoint.
The thing of it is that once upon a time, Jen and I used to be involved with the gals, and we, through UMAC, we were able to get Dr. Chris McCurdy on there, and we did a whole interview with him. Mm-hmm. Even McCurdy said the pull shock statement.
Yep.
At that time, though, he said, I think. But we know now.
He said, I can't confirm. Yeah, he did say, I can't confirm, but it's been said.
But we know now, yes.
And so, I mean, even that, but it's like, there's other stuff you're putting in your body besides just I mean, there's no telling what is in some of that stuff. It could be anything.
Even
You
at
know?
the February Kratom Symposium this year, McCurdy still showed up that graph that they cannot identify these certain compounds that are in it, which blows my mind. Because I'm like, you guys have $1 million machines. You know, how can you not find what compound is in that? I don't know.
There's a reason for that, and I think that that the important point on all that is that there are going to be artifacts of the solvents that are present, and this is true, by the way, in kratom extracts. It is why from day one, the AK has always advocated that the extraction process used for kratom extract products has got to be limited to FDA-approved food-grade solvents, because if you use more powerful chemical solutions, industrial grade chemicals, you are at the end of the day going to have a very highly potent and dangerous product. Kratom, I'm not talking about 7-OH, so we've been against those from day one. And you're also going to have unidentified artifacts that are produced in that chemical process that are from the industrial grade solvents that no one can really identify because they are so minute, but yet they're very powerful along the way. So it just takes, in the same way that we're limited in some of this testing equipment to identify the kratom method, we need to develop the method to develop these artifacts too, because they are industrial grade chemicals. They should not be in a kratom extract product, and certainly shouldn't be in a 7-OH product. But that's what's happening.
You know what? That makes me wonder, like, how many people are actually frying their brain cells or frying their stomach lining,
Yeah.
or, you know, causing ulcers or losing their teeth, maybe their teeth crumbling from the chemicals in that tablet, because they chew it. They chew the tablets.
Yeah, I think we've seen some of them. They're very public.
Yeah, actually, I have.
That's my tongue in cheek.
Okay. I just got that.
Okay.
Let's see. What I wanted to ask you was, you know, because the 7-OHs love to argue with me, and I just love to just let them talk into the internet air, because I'm not going to argue back, but I read their stuff. And they like to say that, you know, that it's so easy to make 7-OH from kratom leaf, and that kratom leaf will be banned because it's the precursor to 7-OH. What do you say about that?
Okay, first, it's not easy to make 7-OH, or everyone will be doing it in their garage. It takes a sophisticated chemical catalyst process, and it's not easy to do. I'm not saying you can't try, but not easy to do. But the truth is, kratom is not the precursor to 7-OH. It takes an affirmative, deliberate act in order to take an otherwise safe substance and convert it into something else. And so you don't allow for there to be, this isn't like you see in the opioid space, where there are gateway drugs that lead to more powerful drugs. If that analogy were to be true, kratom would have to have the same stimulant effects at the levels at which you get euphoria in order to drive you to a more powerful drug. Kratom, as described by the experts, is boring. It doesn't give you euphoric high. It doesn't have the kinds of effects on people that you see. And if you take too much of it, it just makes you sick. And so it has the natural ceiling effect, which Dr. McCurdy has described. So for those that are apologists for the 7-OH industry that say, oh, well, you know, naturally kratom products are the same, and they're just the catalyst for these other products, not true, and certainly shouldn't be evaluated that way.
So it's definitely, you know, from my understanding from watching Dr. McCurdy last year doing that little press conference thing at Champs, when he, so it's he explained, no, not the press conference, the town hall thing that we had. Yeah. You know, and he was up there answering the questions like that. And from my understanding is that kratom, because of the bioavailability of what kratom does to one, you know, to a person, that it would not be considered a precursor. You know, like if because the other argument I hear all the time, well, if 7-OH is going to get banned, kratom is going to get, you know, the baby's going to be thrown with that bathwater as well, you know. But there's different, because McCurdy was worried about, you know, the coca leaf, because that's the other thing that he, does research on, you know, because cocaine is actually, it's not called cocaine, but it's actually an alkaloid in the coca leaf, you know. But 7-OH is not an actual alkaloid in the kratom leaf.
Correct.
It's a metabolite after the drying process.
Absolutely correct. And that's the key point. And that's why it's not appropriate to try to conflate the two. As much as the argument has become, well, we can't tell the difference, let's ban all of it. That has nothing to do with the alkaloid formulation in the plants. It has to do with the way that the 7-OH people have abused the actual reformulation and chemically engineering, and then trying to sell themselves as kratom products. That's where the confusion lied, because nobody can tell the difference according to the enforcement people, because it's labeled as kratom. How can we tell if it's 7-OH? It has nothing to do with the actual formulation of the product. So I think that that's sort of the challenge. And this is not easy, because if it were just black and white and we could say just like that, here's the answer. People have to understand that it takes a little bit of explanation in order to out what the 7-OH people are doing, and then have that individual understand it better without looking at their Google 7-OH and kratom, FDA and kratom page. So we have to fight through that kind of
No,
thing.
7-OH is not one of the alkaloids.
It is not.
It is not one of the alkaloids.
7-OH does not occur in the natural plant at all.
No.
It's only after it's harvested, and it then starts to develop because of the natural degradation of metrogenine in the drying process. And it continues, by the way, throughout at very, very low levels.
Yeah.
And it takes a chemical catalyst agent, pull shot chemicals, in order to stimulate it into the development of a reformulation of a product. So you essentially you have a kratom leaf product, the majority of which is metrogenine. And then you have a 7-OH product, which is the majority of which is 7-OH. And metrogenine does not produce euphoria. It does not suppress your respiratory system. 7-OH gives you a strong euphoric high and suppresses your respiratory system. That's the difference.
Yeah, McCurdy, he explains it as if you cut your arm off, the second, you start bleeding, I guess is like it starts oxidating. And
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember him saying that. Yeah, you did.
yeah, that's a really good way to explain it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we go by it, somebody said, well, it's already a done deal in Kansas and Kentucky. It is not. We have a battle with the governors, and we have a strategy in place. And a key part of that is advocacy. Email the governor's office in both of those states, because we are not done. It ain't done there till the fat lady sings. And
I ain't singing
nobody's,
yet.
I ain't singing.
nobody's singing at this point.
For all y'all in Pennsylvania, look up SB 233. We may have kratom regulation coming this year. Is that true, Mac?
So I'm in close and frequent negotiations with the Pennsylvania committee staff that are overseeing this. So there's always going to be proposals being thrown about, but I think we're making good progress in Pennsylvania.
And then Kate said, can the AKA get these states with KCPAs with proposed bans to actually enforce their KCPA? It's so frustrating to see them flip.
This is a challenge, because you saw what happened in Utah, where we had obviously a KCPA that was very effective. And then you get the masquerader, Senator McKell, who comes sweeping in and uses his influence with the various executive agencies, gets them to come up and say things that are completely bizarre and incorrect and partial and not complete. Give an example. We FOIA'd the medical examiner's office for the data that supported their testimony, and they said, no, we can't deliver that to you because it violates the HIPAA laws and the privacy laws. What? You testified to it. So how can we test the veracity of the data that you have? But that's McKell behind the scenes. And it was here's the quintessential example of what a great deceiver Senator McKell is. He's testifying before the Health Interim Committee about his bill to ban kratom before it got tubed. And he's saying in the course of the testimony, he said, all of the research that's being quoted by the pro-kratom advocates is paid for by the industry. So one of the legislators asked him, well, what do you have to say about the FDA dose finding study? And he said, that was funded by the industry, right? Then at the end of the testimony, and he had the medical examiner, the poison control expert, and the Department of Agriculture testify, then he holds his phone up to give it credibility. So he holds up his phone and said, I've just texted my colleague up on the dais confirming that the FDA dose finding study was funded by industry. Flat out lie.
You know where he got that info from? KDA.
Of course. And then he's on a KSL radio interview, and thankfully I got to go after him. But he says, oh, the thing that everybody should know is that the Mayo Clinic has done some really good research on how unsafe kratom is.
No.
And I pointed out to him, he was on the call, on the interview. And I said, the Mayo Clinic hasn't spent a single penny on research. They have an information sharing agreement for which they get paid by the FDA. In this case, it's outdated information that they haven't corrected, that kratom is dangerous. But they haven't done any study. And to try to borrow the credibility of the Mayo Clinic as the basis for it. And yet, after I told him that, he went on and repeated it several times after that. They don't care. They do not. And Senator McHale is the great deceiver in this case. And now he's working with Dean Francis and the KDA, and he's claiming he's talking to legislators around the country. It is a farce, and he needs to be held accountable because he said it, not me. He said that his initial interest in kratom came because he had a potential client in his law firm that he wanted to represent. Now, why is he then taking that and going to the legislature and advocating for a piece of legislation with the benefit of his law practice?
Ain't
Now,
that a conflict of interest?
It is. Now, he probably deferred taking that case because it is a conflict of interest.
Mm-hmm.
But this is what motivated him, and he's obviously a stubborn guy. So we're going to have a lot more opportunity to discuss it with him. But
Adam wants to know: is there any update on the federal KCPA?
So, as I've said before, we're trying to find a pathway where we won't have the entire dietary supplement industry opposing our bill, which they did on the first two bills that we filed. So we're negotiating, and we're close. Now, if it's a little bit like negotiating with the Iranians, it's hard to get them to agree to anything and trust them on it. So we may end up refiling another bill without their support and just go forward. I think that the attention that has been given to kratom now might be the catalyst for the Congress to say, let's make sure, as FDA Commissioner McCary and HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. say, the focus is not on natural kratom leaf. Let's regulate natural kratom leaf so that it's properly manufactured, labeled properly, formulated properly, and age gated. And let's be done with this.
Oh, you know what? I wanted to ask you. I saw those amazing PDFs that Dr. Heidi did for Tennessee and for Utah. Are we allowed to share those out yet?
Well, ask Heidi, but my answer is yes. If I could give advice to Heidi, yes, I think we should share them.
She absolutely nailed the lies that were being told and had the actual studies or what have you to back up what was said in Tennessee and Utah.
Ooh.
Anything that's presented to the legislature is fair game publicly. So I would be surprised if she were to object, but you can ask her.
I'll ask her, yeah.
Okay.
Because it was amazing.
And Heidi is like phenomenal. Laura Romney is phenomenal.
Yes.
Misty is phenomenal. Jen is phenomenal. Some of the others not so much. So we know we know who the phenomenal crew is, and we know who's not.
The phenomenal crew.
I know you probably can't stay much longer, but I did see that somebody asked about Ohio.
Okay. So two things in Ohio. One is the legislative route. They're in recess now for the holidays, but we had a great hearing. I think that there is an appetite for the legislature to move forward to stop what the Board of Pharmacy is trying to do. The Board of Pharmacy delayed their second rule. They have an emergency rule on metrogeny, which they've now completed, and they're going to send over to what's called the JCAR, which is the Joint Committee on the regulations that are filed by agencies, and the JCAR gets to review it. 7OH is proceeding, and we have no problem with 7OH being banned under that proceeding. I suspect that now that they've completed, the Board of Pharmacy has now completed that process, that they will turn their attention to what's called regular rulemaking for metrogeny, which they promised they're going to do, and so that fight will ensue. We're encouraging the legislature to obviously oppose that. to defer any further review of metrogene for a year, because what we heard from the presentation at the Board of Pharmacy from the chief pharmacist at the Ohio Board of Pharmacy was a conflation of 7-OH and kratom. She never distinguished what the data was, and there's sufficient data found in recent 8 factors that were done by Jack Henningfield and his associates that show that there is a distinct difference between 7-OH and natural leaf kratom. And so they need to examine that. And we think they need a year to do that with more comprehensive review than what they got. So that's what we hope will happen. In addition, our KCPA may be on a pathway to accelerated passage because of what the Board of Pharmacy is doing. So a little complicated in Ohio, but we're in the game and we're playing hard.
Don't give up advocating, you guys. Do not give up advocating at all.
Yeah, I know we're all really tired.
Yeah.
I mean, I know, especially with everything that's gone on in Tennessee, I'm exhausted, but we can't give up. You know?
Right, we cannot. And I do have to jump in. Let me tell you, I just said it, but I cannot tell you how much we appreciate the strong commitment that advocates have, and like you, in rallying these advocates, you have a special place. You have appreciation for what you do. So thank you for all that. And thankfully, it's not filtered by incorrect information. It's filtered by exactly what the reality is, and that's where I think you distinguish yourselves in this debate. So thanks so much for all that you guys do.
Yeah, you
Thank
guys have a
you.
great Easter weekend, and thank you for attending the weekly recap with Mac.
Thank you.